So continuing on with the explanation of the Matn of Abi Shujaa from the world-renowned Tayyibah Books Publishing House, which is a high-quality source for classical Islamic material in English, in easy to read, easy to understand, precise, concise, and trustworthy English, so that the student of knowledge who has not yet learned the Arabic language can level up in their knowledge, and they can learn beyond what is the obligatory knowledge or the basic knowledge. So we got to page we got to page 498, which is a division of the spoils. And once again, we reiterate, just as we have before in the past, that as Muslims, we adhere to and we abide by the Islamic law. We confirm it, we admit it, we stand by it, we believe in it, and that in no way, shape, or form means that we would go out into the streets and kill people at random. So it should be known that as Muslims, we have to follow what was revealed. We cannot deny it, we cannot compromise, we cannot reject it. So we know that these are the laws and these are the rules. But again, like we said before, especially when we were talking about the religious punishments for certain sins, that these punishments are to be carried out through a valid Islamic legal process, which involves the infrastructure of a caliph, and we nowadays do not have that. So it is not permissible for us to take the law into our own hands. Even in the books of law, of Islamic law, it tells us that it is not permissible for us to take the law into our own hands. So just want to make that very clear. There's a vast difference between the Sunni Muslim, yani the one who is on the straight path, and a vast difference between the Muslim who is actually following Islam and the evil terrorists. So it has been a calamity upon the image of Islam or the name of Islam that these extremists, who in reality they are not following the Quran, they are not following the Hadith, they are not implementing Islam correctly, that they have been given a spotlight and they have been highlighted and they have given Muslims a bad name. So when we explain these laws and when we talk about these laws, when we read in the books of the scholars, this is for academic purposes, for knowledge, so that this tradition and this information remains alive amongst the Muslims. And it will remain alive regardless of what anybody does. But there are some people out there that are waiting in the wings, that they're waiting, predators, waiting to pounce, trying to use any invalid pretext to harm the Muslim nation. And so it should be known that they have no grounds for that, and that in reality they are bigots and they are just looking for any excuse to try and harm the Muslims. But of course, like we always say, we are not extremists. Islam doesn't teach you to go out in the streets and kill people. Islam doesn't teach you to commit injustice. Islam doesn't teach you that you cannot function as a member of society, even in the secular West. So I want to make that very clear, because nobody should get the wrong idea. And this, we've mentioned this over and over and over. So alhamdulillah, the truth is consistent. So continuing on with page 498, this is where we reached. This is the chapter of division of the spoils. So whoever has a copy of the book, they can follow along. The author said, the seized monies are split 5 ways. 1/5 of it is spent on those upon whom 1/5 of the war spoils is spent. 4/5 go to the fighters and the welfare of the Muslims. That was the Matn. The explanation, the seized monies, malul fay, are split 5 ways. 1/5 of it is spent on those upon whom 1/5 of the war spoils is spent. The remaining 4/5 go to the fighters and the welfare of the Muslims. So that's all that's mentioned in that chapter. Now we go to a new chapter, page 499. It's entitled Paying the Jizya. The author said, there are 5 things that make the jizya obligatory: puberty, sanity, being male, and to be among the people of the book, or those whom it is doubtful that they have received a book. The minimum jizya is a dinar every year, which is a very small amount. Let's see if we can get the recent or updated price of gold. So for the dinar, it has a certain weight in grams of pure gold. And so we can just check how many grams that is, and then we can check online to see how much that is in dollars. So 1 dinar is approximately 4.24 grams of gold, which doesn't sound like a lot. I'll say maybe that's like $100. Well, let's see how close we are to that. Maybe the price of gold has gone up since I last checked it, but I last checked it about a month ago. So how much is 4.24 grams of 24 karat gold? And so the current market price of gold is $75 per gram. Okay. So, oh wow, it's a lot, mashallah, okay. So, approximately 318 US dollars. I was off by a lot. I thought it would only be like 100. Oh, so it is 104.21 per gram. So the approximate value of 1 dinar, which is approximately 4.24 grams of pure gold, equals to $441.90. So that is the amount of the jizya that would have to be paid yearly. And that is a relatively small amount. So the minimum jizya is a dinar every year. 2 dinars are taken from the middle class, and 4 dinars are taken from the wealthy. Beyond the amount paid as jizya, it is permissible to make hospitality a condition upon them. The jizya contract entails 4 things: that they would pay the jizya, that the rules of Islam would apply to them, that they would only mention Islam with goodness, and that they would not do what is harmful to the Muslims. They would be known that they are not Muslims by wearing a patch on their dresses with colors contrasting to the colors of their dress, and by tightening the sash on their waists. They would be prevented from riding horses. So this section pertains, that was the Matn, the explanation. This section pertains to specific details that apply to the ones subject to the jizya payment. The author mentioned 5 conditions for the jizya payment to be obligatory: puberty, sanity, being male, and to be among the people of the book, or those whom it is doubtful that they have received a book. As for the amount that the dhimmi pays, the dhimmi is basically a constituent of the Muslim government. So like we mentioned before, that when the Muslim ruler goes to a foreign country and presents Islam to them, and if they refuse to embrace al-Islam, the Muslim ruler then presents to them living under the rules of Islam, in which the society would flourish and there would be no injustice committed in the streets, no crime, there would be no poverty, the social ills would be solved, and everybody would have a nice and decent worldly life. So everybody would have their rights, everybody would have a nice, decent worldly life. It's just that certain things would be forbidden in the open. Like we said, the Muslim government only deals with what is done in public. Whatever people do in the privacy of their own homes, the Muslim government does not spy on them, unlike it occurs in other places in the world where the government has access to what you say on the phone and your emails and your text messages and what you're watching on TV. All of this data, it is collected and it is stored and it can be accessed by them whenever they want. This is something that is known. It is out in the open. People, kind of have accepted that. But so the Muslim government would not do that. It would be forbidden for them to spy on their constituents. So, but there would be no, let's say, selling pork in public. There would be no, let's say, like what they call strip clubs and places of prostitution and things like that. It would be a decent, good society. So that is the dhimmi. The dhimmi is a non-Muslim who he lives in that society, so he has his rights, and he can live freely and openly. He would not be harassed or abused or persecuted. He would be living his life in the safety of the Muslim government. So the Muslim government is there to provide a safe environment, a healthy environment for people to live, because that's the whole point is, and for people to live. And for people to live in a good way. So, as for the amount that the dhimmi pays, the minimum jizya is 1 dinar every year. So that's the minimum. So if they're poor, that's how much they would pay a year. How much, if you compare that to what they call taxes. So I wouldn't technically call this a tax. It's basically just like a contract that the non-Muslim makes with the Muslim government so that he can get these certain benefits. It's not a tax. So, in any case, how much does the American living below the poverty line, how much taxes do they pay? How much does the government take out of your check if you're working a basic 9 to 5? If you're a wage earner, how much does the government take out of your check, let's say, per month? I think it's more than 400. Let's say they check all the normal things on their W-2. They have what they call Social Security. They have the whatever federal tax, the state tax. I think it's $70 per check. I think I heard somewhere they said 30% of your check. But anyway, the amount of money that, let's say, the average American pays in taxes is exponentially higher than this 1 dinar amount. And that would be for the poor, the minimum jizya. It would be 2 dinars are taken from the middle class, and 4 dinars are taken from the rich. So 4 dinars, let's do the math on that. 4.24 grams. Let's see. And it's important to get these numbers because it puts it in perspective for you. Okay, so that would be 16.96 grams of pure gold. So that would be approximately $1,767.60 per year for the wealthy dhimmi, for the wealthy subject of the Islamic government. That is a small amount of money. How much does a wealthy person spend in a month in America? Let's say, what do you call wealthy? $500,000 house? That's not wealthy? $500,000 house is average? And where? Allahu Akbar. 500,000? Yeah. Allahu Akbar. I'm definitely out of the loop on that one. I thought 500,000 was like a mansion. Wow, $1 million? Okay, fine. So what are we saying? Like 5 million for like wealthy? And so let's say, they put the 20% up front. That leaves with how much? Like approximately how much would they spend a month for the mortgage? Yeah.
Probably, I would think like 20,000.
Allahu Akbar, 20,000? The rent is 20,000? Allahu Akbar. And so we're not even talking about taxes. But of course, the wealthy people in America, they, of course, and we would say that usually, normally, when a person is wealthy, that means that they know like how to, use money and spend money and manage money. So they can probably, be educated on how to file their taxes in a way where they would legally not pay as much as if they didn't know how to file their taxes properly. But still, I think it's a lot, the taxes that they pay anyways. Like they do pay, like they do have to pay like some, but anyway, it's a lot. So and it's way more than $1,767.60. So I would think that a non-Muslim, he'll say, sign me up. Where's that at? I want to live there. But right now there is this infrastructure doesn't exist. So this, of course, this ruling is something that was implemented in the past and no longer implemented as of today. Beyond the amount paid as jizya, it is permissible to make hospitality a condition upon them. The dhimmi people have to abide by specific rules. These are that they would pay the jizya, that the rules of Islam would apply to them, that they would only mention Islam with goodness, and that they would not do what is harmful to the Muslims. So there would be certain rules. Basically, they're not allowed to say like go in the street and like badmouth Islam. You know what I mean? Like we said, if they do it in public, obviously if like they get reported to the authorities, something would happen. And that's something that, many governments do. It's not something that is strange or like specific to the Islamic government. Like all governments, they have like certain things that you can't do or say, especially nowadays. If anybody's noticed, there's a lot more of that going around. And of course, they cannot do what is harmful to the Muslims. They cannot go and like, terrorize Muslims or kill them or do something to them. Furthermore, the dhimmi ones would be known that they are not Muslims by wearing a patch on their dresses with colors contrasting to the colors of their dress and by tightening the sash on their waists. They would be prevented from riding horses. I don't have much details about the horses thing, but the point is there would be a way by which the subject of the Islamic government, the non-Muslim subject of the Islamic government, the constituent, non-Muslim constituent of the Islamic government, and where he would be identified just by his outer appearance that he is not a Muslim. So that's for the purposes of making sure they get their rights, making sure that their whatever they signed up for is protected, etc. so there won't be any confusion or any misconceptions. طيب, so that concludes that chapter. Now to page 501. It's the chapter of hunting and slaughtering. This is a very interesting chapter. So like we mentioned at the beginning when we introduced the subjects, that the Islamic law covers every aspect of life. So there is an Islamic law for hunting and slaughtering. The author said, rules pertaining to hunting and slaughtering. The slaughter of whatever one is able to slaughter is by cutting the upper throat or the pit of the throat. Let's look at footnote 375. That is just below laryngeal prominence. Laryngeal prominence. And like, you know how I think it's referring to some animals have in their throat is protruding. Some people, for the human beings, they call it the Adam's apple. So I think some animals, they have something similar. So that's called the laryngeal prominence. Or the pit of the throat. The slaughter of whatever one is unable to slaughter is killing it by inflicting a lethal wound on it wherever one is able. The perfect slaughter entails 4 matters: cutting the trachea, 376, the esophagus, 377, and the 2 jugular veins. 2 things make it sufficient: cutting the trachea and the esophagus. It is permissible to hunt with any trained beast or of prey. Oh, let's read footnote 376, 377. 376 is the air pipe, and 377 is the food pipe. 2 things make it sufficient: cutting the trachea and the esophagus. It is permissible to hunt with any trained beast of prey, whether a land predator or a raptorial bird. The conditions of its training attainment are 4. If it is sent, it goes. If it is ordered to stop, it refrains. If it killed the game, it does not eat any of it, and it does that repeatedly. If any of these conditions was left unsatisfied, it is not unlawful to eat anything that it kills, unless the game was reached while still alive, and it was then slaughtered. It is permissible to slaughter with everything that cuts except the tooth and the nail. The slaughter of every Muslim and a person of the book is lawful, and the slaughter of the Majusi and the idol worshipper is not permissible. The slaughter of a fetus is accomplished through the slaughter of its mother, unless found alive and was then slaughtered. Whatever is cut off of a living creature has the ruling of that creature had it been a carcass. Footnote 378, dead and not slaughtered, except the hair. So that was the Matn, that was the text. Now we're going to go into the explanation. Hunting is permissible under certain conditions. If the person is someone whose slaughtering is valid, then if such a person goes to hunt using a trained animal or a trained bird, then it is permissible to eat what that animal or that bird hunts. So a condition is for the person who is hunting with that trained animal to be someone whose slaughtering is valid. For these land animals or birds to be considered trained, there are 4 conditions to be fulfilled. Number 1, for the trained animal to attack if the one who hunts with it orders it to attack. So if the dog kills by itself a prey and not by the order of its master, then it is not permissible to eat that prey. So what it means is you can use certain animals to hunt. Mostly what people use for that are dogs. But you can use other animals like a leopard, if you can train a leopard, or a cheetah, if you can train a cheetah to hunt. So whatever animal that it is that you train to hunt, even like a falcon, any animal that you can train to hunt, it has to fulfill these conditions for whatever they hunt to be considered halal. To be considered halal to eat. So the first thing is that it hunts when it is ordered to attack. So if you have, let's say, a trained dog, if it goes by itself without you telling it to go, and then it kills something, it would not be halal. Number 2, when the owner orders it to stop, it stops. So immediately when the owner tells it stop, the animal stops. When the trained animal kills a prey, he does not eat from it. So he only kills it, and he doesn't take a couple of bites for himself. Because if he did, then that means he's not trained. For the animal to do this repeatedly until one is convinced that the animal is now trained, meaning now it is considered a trained animal. So it's not just one time he told it to go and it went, and he told it to stop and it stopped, and he killed the animal and didn't eat from it. He has to do it repeatedly until he is sure, until he's convinced that's the case. If any of these 4 conditions are not satisfied, then it is not permissible to eat that killed prey, except if the person reaches the prey while it is still alive in a stable condition, and then he slaughters it. Then it is permissible to eat it. So let's say the person has a dog. What kind of dog can we train to hunt? Let's say we train a German Shepherd, or let's say a Doberman, or let's say a Rottweiler. Are Rottweilers fast? I don't know. Well, anyway, let's say he trains a German Shepherd. He trains a German Shepherd to hunt. He tells the German Shepherd to go. The German Shepherd goes. Then he, let's say, wounds the animal. And the owner and the master of the dog, the Muslim, he goes to the wounded animal and it still has a stable life. So let's say that the German Shepherd just, let's say, bit its leg, so the animal can't run anymore. So the Muslim, he gets to that wounded animal, and the wounded animal has a stable life. He's not, let's say, in the middle of dying. So he's breathing normally. He's not in the process of losing his life. So in this case, the owner, he then can slaughter that animal, and that would be halal. Because when he got to it, it wasn't in its final moments. It wasn't dying. When a dog kills a prey, the area that comes in contact with where the dog bites the animal needs to be washed 7 times, and one of these washes should be mixed with soil. One does that before one can eat that area. This washing is to remove the najasa caused by the dog. So just so you know, to what extent in the Shafi'i school, still even in the Shafi'i school, because what does that mean? The Shafi'i school, and according to Al-Imam al-Shafi'i, the dog is filthy while alive. So if the dog, let's say, licks something, that place that the dog licked has to be washed 7 times with pure and purifying water. And one of those washes, the water has to be mixed with soil, with pure soil, with pure and purifying soil. So that's let's say, for anything that comes from the dog that is moist, whether it was the saliva or the wetness of his nose or its urine or its feces, or let's say the dog was wet and it started shaking, subhanallah. When you see that in a movie, or when you see that on TV or in a show, and you just get the chills. You're you're glad you're not there, and you don't want to know where that place is, because all that water spraying around. But anyway, so if the dog did that, then that whole area that touched that water has to be washed 7 times. One of those washes mixed with pure and purifying soil. That's according to Ash-Shafi'i. According to other than Ash-Shafi'i, and as long as the dog is alive, he's not considered filthy. But if he does, let's say, urinate or defecates, and it still would need to be purified, but not with the 7 washes. So the filth of a dog, according to other imams, is washed like regular filth is washed. And you just have to purify the area. You remove the attributes and the bulk of the filth with pure and purifying water. But in the Shafi'i school, you have to do it 7 washes, one of them with soil. So even if, in the case where, someone trains a dog to hunt, the Muslim trains a dog to hunt and he uses it for hunting. Let's say that dog, let's say he gets the gazelle by the jugular. He bites the throat of the gazelle and he doesn't eat any of it, and all the conditions are satisfied. So now the hunter, and he's going to go, he can consume the meat of that gazelle, and the gazelle itself, and he is pure, except that part where the dog bit the gazelle, that part where it was touched by the dog's mouth has to be washed 7 times. One of them mixed with pure and purifying soil, and if he wants to consume that part. It is permissible to slaughter with everything that cuts except the tooth and nail. So first he mentioned the judgments of hunting with the trained animal. Now he's going to mention the explanation for slaughtering by hand. And subhanallah, we live in a time where many people, they are very relaxed and very loose, in the dispraised way, in the way that makes them fall into sin. They are very relaxed and very loose with judging meat as halal. Very relaxed. So right now we're going to go into how we judge meat to be halal. So first we say it is permissible to slaughter with everything that cuts except a tooth and a nail. So if somebody had made, let's say, a blade somehow out of a tooth, then this would not be valid to use for hand slaughtering. And if they used that to slaughter the animal, it would not be halal. Same thing if they made it out of a nail. So let's say like someone had a really long or sharp nail, and then they cut the animal where it's supposed to be cut to slaughter, it would not be halal. The slaughter of every Muslim and a person of the book is lawful, but the slaughter of the Majusi and the idol worshipper is not permissible. So every Muslim who slaughters, with the conditions, his slaughter is valid and the meat that he slaughters is halal. And also the slaughter of the people of the book. Who are the people of the book? The Christians and the Jews. Let's see if he's going to mention any details about that. So when we say the people of the book, we're referring to the Christians and we're referring to the Jews. So if a Christian, if he slaughters with the conditions that we mentioned, and without mentioning, let's say, other than the name of God, so like for example, they don't say in the name of Jesus and then slaughter. If they say in the name of Jesus and slaughter, then we cannot eat that meat. But if they slaughter it, even if they don't say anything at all, with the conditions that we mentioned, then it is halal for us to eat that meat. So then somebody might tell you, oh, well, isn't America a Christian country, and don't they, for example, they sell meat in like the supermarkets, etc. We say that meat is not hand slaughtered. So even though people consider America to be a Christian country, but that doesn't mean that the slaughterhouses that they slaughter with the proper conditions. They have to do it by hand, and they have to cut the specific areas that we mentioned. As for the Jews, they are very strict about slaughtering. So if something says kosher on it, then you can trust it, that it's been hand slaughtered properly. So if a Muslim really feels like he really needs to, eat chicken and eat beef and eat lamb, and he can't find any halal, any Muslims, any meat from Muslims that is truly halal and hand slaughtered, and he could easily find kosher. The slaughter of whatever one is able to slaughter is by cutting the upper throat or the pit of the throat. So now we're going to mention where we cut. A condition for the validity of the act of slaughtering is to have the intention of slaughtering, to intend to slaughter the animal. So among the conditions for the validity of the slaughtering is that you're doing this, and you're cutting this, or this cutting is occurring for slaughtering. This means, for example, if the knife falls from the hand of a person without having the intention to slaughter the animal, and that knife cuts the neck of the animal, in this case it is not permissible to eat this animal, because it was killed without the intention of slaughtering it. Likewise, if the animal comes towards a knife and gets cut by that knife, and then dies without any person moving the knife, in this case it is not permissible to eat this animal, because there was no intention of slaughter. From this one knows that it is not permissible to eat the animal which is slaughtered by a machine, because that slaughtering is done without a human being who puts it in motion each time it slaughters. Now, if there was a machine, like let's say in the case of the chicken, if someone had made a machine that you can put, let's say 100 chickens at one time, let's say under one blade, or under many blades, but the cutting of the blades is initiated by the action of a Muslim, then in this case, and so let's say a Muslim presses one button, and then that button then makes those 100 blades, let's say, fall on the neck of the chicken and slaughters it, and he cuts it properly, then those chickens would be halal, because those blades were moved, and the movement of those blades was because of the action of that Muslim. But the way that they do it in most places that they have the machine slaughter for the chickens is that they have them on conveyor belts, so they're like in a line, one after the other. And then what they do is just press the button one time, and then the conveyor belt starts to move, and so then each chicken, let's say, is cut by the function of the electricity. So it's not that there's a Muslim pressing the button each time that makes the cut. It's the button is pushed, and then the one cut, the first one that is cut is halal, but then the rest of them, they continue to be cut not by the action of a Muslim. So that's the difference. So in that case, when you have that type of machine cut, the first one would be halal, but then the rest of them would not be. And then that non-halal meat would be mixed together with the halal one. And so you would not know which one is the one that is actually halal. And when you are doubting about a certain meat, if it is halal or not, that would make it not permissible to consume that meat. So if there was some meat in front of you and you're not sure, was this slaughtered properly or not, is this Islamically slaughtered by hand or not, then you cannot eat it. Similarly, if a person shoots an arrow without the intention of killing an animal, rather because he is practicing, for example, yet coincidentally the arrow hits a deer and kills it, it is not permissible to eat this deer, because the person who shot the arrow did not have the intention of killing that deer. So let's say the person was doing target practice with his bow and arrow in his backyard, or not his backyard, in the forest. So he had a target set up and he was shooting arrows in the forest. And then as he was shooting, let's say a duck flew by. The duck's in the forest. And some sort of edible fowl flew by and it got hit by the arrow. Because when he threw the arrow, he's not intending to kill the animal, he's intending to shoot the target, that bird would not be permissible to eat, would not be halal. Whereas if you're hunting, let's say with a bow and arrow or with a spear, and you throw the spear, let's say, at a gazelle, and the spear hits the gazelle and you get it right through the heart and it drops dead, then that is halal. You can eat it because you have killed it through hunting. The author mentioned the upper part of the neck and the lower part of the neck to make it clear that it is valid to slaughter the animal by cutting the food pipe and the air pipe anywhere in the neck. It is not a condition to cut the upper part of the neck or the lower part of the neck or the middle part of the neck, as long as one cuts those two pipes that are in the neck of the animal. In regards to animals with long necks, like the camel, it is better to slaughter them from the lower neck. This is easier for their soul to leave the body. It is less painful for the animal. However, animals with short necks, like the cow or the sheep for example, it is better to slaughter them from the upper neck. The slaughter of whatever is unable to slaughter is through killing it by inflicting a lethal wound on it whenever one is able. If one cannot reach the edible animal, meaning the domestic animal, to slaughter it, in this case it is permissible to kill that animal by injuring it anywhere and in any way that kills the animal. In this case it is permissible to eat it. A well-known example is if the camel runs away and becomes wild, and its owner cannot get it back. It is permissible for the owner to treat this camel as if it is a hunted animal, because he cannot get a hold of it to slaughter it in the proper way by cutting its neck. So he kills it the way he can. As it was mentioned, it is a condition for the validity of the slaughtering to cut off the two pipes, al-hulqum, which is used for breathing, and the mari, which is used for water and food. The food and water pipe and the respiratory pipe need to be both cut off. But it is sunnah to cut off four things: the hulqum, the respiratory pipe, trachea; the mari, the food and water pipe, esophagus, which is behind the trachea; and 3 and 4, the wadajan, the two veins that are on both sides of the neck, the jugular veins. Cutting off those two jugular veins is recommended, but it is not an obligation. It is recommended to cut off the 4 of these at once, but the obligation is to cut off the 2 pipes, the food and water pipe and the air pipe. This is according to Shafi'i. According to other imams, you have to also cut the 2 jugular veins. As for the camels, it is sunnah to slaughter them in a specific way called nahr. This means to slaughter the camel in the lower part of the neck and not the middle part, and not the middle or upper part of the neck. They usually stab the neck of the animal and then cut the tubes and the veins. This makes the death easier for the camel if it is slaughtered this way. If the camel is slaughtered as the sheep is slaughtered, this is permissible, but it is sunnah to slaughter it in the way called nahr. And for the camel, it's sunnah to slaughter it in that specific way. Also, it is sunnah for the one who is slaughtering to sharpen his knife, because the Prophet ﷺ ordered us to do that. Imam Muslim narrated in his book Sahih Muslim that the Prophet ﷺ said what means: if you slaughter, make sure to slaughter in a good way and let one sharpen his knife. It is sunnah to direct the slaughtered animal towards the Qibla, and it is sunnah while slaughtering to say Bismillah. This is according to the school of Imam al-Shafi'i, may Allah raise his rank. However, according to the school of Abu Hanifa, if the Muslim leaves out saying Bismillah intentionally while slaughtering the animal is not edible. Imam al-Shafi'i says it is edible, but one would have left out a sunnah. So, in terms for saying Bismillah, some imams, they said you have to do it. Like Imam Abu Hanifa. If the Muslim leaves out saying Bismillah intentionally when slaughtering, then according to him, it's not edible. The meat would not be halal. According to Imam al-Shafi'i, even if the Muslim does not say Bismillah on purpose, then the meat would still be edible. So there's a difference about that. A condition for the validity of slaughtering is to slaughter the animal before it reaches the stage of throes of death. So if the animal is dying, meaning its soul is coming out, and the person slaughters it then, this does not make it edible. One needs to slaughter it before it gets to that stage. The slaughtering of the non-pubescent child is valid. The boy or girl who is not mumayyiz, meaning he or she did not reach the age of mental discrimination according to the stronger saying, it is permissible to eat what they slaughter, because they do that slaughtering with an intention in a voluntary way. The same judgment applies to the insane person. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. And there's still more details left to talk about the slaughtering, which we will cover insha'Allah next week. Yes, sir?
Breaking the head, the neck, so that's what
No, has to be cut.
decapitated.
Decapitating is fine from the front.
And if you have a dog, let's say you unwrap it and it kills it, it's still halal.
As long as the dog meets the conditions for it to be considered trained, yeah, that's what it means hunting with an animal, they kill it.
If you have, like, say, your camel, you're traveling and he's injured, breaks his leg, he can't travel anymore, can you slaughter him?
Yeah, well, any animal that's edible, and that's a good point that you're making. So let's say if it was a wild animal, and let's say it was like limp, or let's say it was injured by another animal, or something was wrong with it, where you can easily get your hands on it, then you have to slaughter it by cutting. In that case, because you can get to it. The hunting with the animal or with like a spear or a bow and arrow, that's for when you can't, let's say, get your hands on it easily. Like, like a deer running through the woods or like something like that. Yeah, the only way you can slaughter it is by inflicting a lethal wound, either with an arrow or with a spear. You can even use like those crossbows where they shoot the arrow. Anything that kills by its sharpness, not by its weight. And so the same thing also with a domesticated animal. Let's say you had a domesticated animal and somehow it got loose and you can't get your hands on it, and a domesticated edible animal. So let's say you had like a chicken coop and then like a bunch of chickens just ran away and you can't get your hands on them, then the same judgment applies. If you hit them with a lethal blow, like with something like an arrow or a spear, then it would be considered halal. Or if you send like your trained animal to hunt it and it kills it, then it will be halal as well. No, not a predatory animal. Anything that I mentioned about slaughtering and making it halal is for edible animals. When we say edible animals, it means animals that if you were to slaughter them, their meat would be halal. So this would exclude animals that even if you slaughter them the proper Islamic way, their meat would not be halal, like a lion. Yeah. If you slaughter a lion, you still can't eat it. Or like a pig. If you slaughter a pig, you still can't eat it. Yeah, certain animals that are not edible. No.
And what feed is not acceptable? Like, say, ducks or gators, alligators?
Ducks are permissible, are edible animals. Alligators are not. But yeah, so we have a lot of ducks around, and they seem kind of plump. But I've heard people say that they don't taste good. I never tried one. Someone asked online if slaughtering a cow, is it permissible to hit first to be unconscious in order to be easy to slaughter? So it is permissible for like a large animal like a cow to stun it, but the thing with that is you have to make sure that it still has a stable life. So as long as it has a stable life and it's not in the process of dying, then you can stun the animal. Because some cows, you might need like 5 people to hold a cow down.
If you have a sick animal and it's like dying, is it halal? Not to eat it, of course. It's sick.
Dying like not in the throes of death, you mean?
Yeah, it's not a disease or something.
As disease, so it will die. Like let's say like,
Spare it. Is there a special way to kill it? To spare it from serious?
so let's say like it's sick and like in a month or 2 it'll die, right? You can slaughter it and eat it. Yeah, because it means when we say not in the process of dying, like in its final moments, like when the soul is leaving the body, it's called the throes of death. Now, any others? If it's sick? Like, what kind of sick?
It's like doing that weird color.
Hmm. The sheep?
Yeah, I had it for a week.
And you ate it? Oh.
No,
Oh, okay. I don't have much details about that actually. Inshallah, I'll ask. Tayyib, any others on there?